Hello and welcome to Small Business Pivots. I'm your host, Michael Morrison, a small business coach. On our podcast, we explore the stories, strategies, and pivots that small business owners have made to build successful businesses doing $1 million and more in annual revenue. Our guest today is Ron Douglas, and he is on a mission. Known as the $1 Million Mentor, Ron founded Mentoring Giants to create a wave of self-made millionaires. Ron is also known world-renowned from the popular show Blue Collar Backer on the Discovery Channel. With an impressive track record of owning and successfully exiting over 40 companies, Ron stands tall as an authority in rapidly building businesses that thrive and generate substantial cash flow quickly and simply. He has an impressive ability to cut through the fluff and help you create efficient and high-performing businesses. This sets him apart as a true titan in the business world. Let's get to Ron and learn how you can break through to the next $1 million level in your business. Welcome to the show, Ron. How are you today?
Good, bud. How are you been?
I'm doing fantastic here in the heat of the summer in the middle of the country. Where are you at?
I'm in Colorado. I'm pretty lucky. I'm about 7,500 feet up in the mountains. We got a little ranch up here in the mountains, and so it's kind of nice.
Very cool. So I'm a little bit south of you in a warmer spot in Oklahoma, and it's we're not in the clouds as you say. We are in 110 degree weather today, so it's a little warm. So if you see that shiny forehead, that's probably sweat.
Yeah, I don't miss those days at all, man. I used to live in Texas, and man, I don't miss that at all.
Yeah, that's even worse. Even worse. So, well, let's get started here. So our listeners are small business owners. Like I've mentioned to you before, it's almost like this show was written for you and you were written for the show and vice versa, because we target the exact clientele prospects, and that is small business owners who get stuck and they want to hit that $1 million mark or more, hopefully more. I encourage them to do more. If they can hit 1 million, they can hit 2 and then 5 and 10 if they know how. And that's what you do. So let's back up just a little bit so we can catch up on your life, kind of maybe some struggles you went through, some mindset blocks that you did growing up, and how you overcame those so that we can relate to you today.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So growing up, are you from Texas? Is that what you were referring to?
Sort of. I claim Texas. As my dad was in the Army for 22 years, so kind of an Army brat, been all over the world. But Texas was our home, and we always kind of came back there after, being stationed overseas.
I know for myself and many small business owners, a lot of us had doubts. We had a lack of self-worth. Did you go through any of that as a child, or was you?
Oh man, I was so confused as a kid. And the reason why is I thought differently. And I swear that I did. I really thought differently than everybody I was surrounded by. And later on, looking back, I understood why. It's because they were all in the military. I mean, my dad was in the Army, it was join the military, do your 20, get out and retire, and I just, and when I say I fought. I mean, I was always in trouble. I was always getting in fights. I was a total outsider, and I could not find my place. And I didn't find my place for a long time. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing that was around me. And they were all trying to talk me into joining the Army. And a lot of my friends from high school, they all joined the Army, and I got kicked out of high school for fighting too much. I mean, I got my dad in trouble with the community sergeant major. I mean, I was just not, I couldn't find my place forever.
Were you studious at all? A good, like, not in the manner, but as far as like getting great grades and all that stuff?
No, I didn't care for school. I had no desire to be in school. I thought it was a waste of time. I was always asking, how does this apply to my life? How is this going, how is this going to make me succeed? What's in this for me? The one thing I did have though is my dad was a huge history buff, and because we were in Germany and all that all that. Spent a lot of time over there. We got to tour a lot of castles and World War II history, and I was a huge World War II history buff, and so I took advantage of that. I skipped school, and I would go down to all these places and find like World War II locations, Hitler's bunker. I toured all. I would skip school and go down to Hitler's bunker, or skip school and go to a concentration camp, or stuff like that. It was interesting.
Yeah,
high school.
Sounds like it. Well, I know a lot of business owners are, well, I'll say business owner wannabes. So those wanting to start a business, they don't, because they're fearful. They don't know enough. They're not smart enough. And I'm here to tell people, you don't have to be book smart to run a successful business. Is that right?
Not at all. The first time I stepped foot on a college campus, and this is a true fact, the first time I ever stepped foot on a college campus, I was there because I was invited to come and speak.
Huh.
That was the first. I remember standing there in the waiting room, and they were showing me the stage, and they were showing me where I was going to talk and all that. And I went, "Oh, this is the first time I've ever been on a college campus ever." Yeah. In my life.
Well,
school. School's important. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it helps to know that stuff. I was an avid reader. I did like to read and stuff like that. I knew math. I knew how to read. But a lot of the stuff to me just didn't apply. And you don't need any of that for starting your own business.
Yes. So what do you think you need? What is probably one thing that you would say it requires?
The desire to work unsupervised.
Okay. Yo, isn't that the truth? You are your own boss.
If you are a video gamer, and listen, everybody has the motivation. So I'm not knocking video gamers, but if you are a video gamer and you would rather sit and play video games all day than work on your business, then it's probably not for you yet.
Yes.
And the only reason I say yet is because you just haven't found the right desire, the right drive, the right motivation, or the right business for you. Once you find the right business that fits you, the motivation is self-motivating after that. You just want to go.
Yeah. I've got some relatives who better listen to the show, because they keep talking about their Tesla that they're going to buy and all this. And I'm like, well, you got to have a business first. Oh yeah, I'm going to start this. I'm like, okay, well, if you're focused on the Tesla and not the business, you might want to reconsider what business you're going to start, because you got to have that passion, that drive. Those days when it's hard, when somebody bloodies your nose because, an employee sues you, or your largest customer leaves you, those are real life scenarios that you got to have that drive and that passion that you're talking about. So you're a business coach, right? You're a mentoring giants.
Yeah. So I started mentoring giants after I did the TV show. And the reason I did was because when I did the TV show, at the time I owned 20 companies.
Wow.
So I had my foot in 20 different companies. I was doing a TV show. I was so burned out. And then they wanted me to sign for 5 more seasons. And I said, I can't do this. I had 8 kids. We homeschooled. I was burning the candle at both ends. I told my wife, I said, I'm about to have a heart attack. We need to back up here. So I decided to quit everything. I didn't answer anybody's calls. People were trying to get me on podcasts and do all this stuff and coach and all that. And I kind of feel like I missed a little bit of an opportunity there, because this was probably 2017 or something like that. And I ignored everybody, and I went black. I mean, I sold my businesses. I sold my my house, and we moved down here to the southern Colorado, bought a 50-acre ranch, and just been chilling down here. And I was going to retire.
Yeah.
And then somebody recognized me. This is not very long ago, probably less than 6 months ago. Somebody recognized me in a store from the show, believe it or not, and stopped and talked with me. And they were asking me my business advice. And my wife started tugging on my coat about an hour and a half later. She's like, "We got to go," And I was like, it just filled my cup, I mean, I just was totally pumped helping this guy out, and I loved it. And I thought, I need to get back into doing the coaching. I said, I don't mind doing the coaching. I don't mind helping people. So, there we are. Here we are.
Yeah, it's definitely a fulfilling experience. That's for sure, to watch and hold their hand and watch them, root for them from the sidelines and everything. So this show, just in case people didn't catch the earlier part of this, Blue Collar Backers, right, on Discovery Channel. Yeah.
Yes,
so
sir.
Tell us about that, because I believe you're the first celebrity on a TV show or a reality show. I don't know what they call those now, but what was that experience like?
It was a cool experience. I had always wanted to do something like that. I always thought it would be kind of cool. They approached me about it. I had been coaching somebody that knew a producer, and my name came up at a roundtable event, and they decided to build a show, or they were already building a show, and they thought I would be a good fit. And so they reached out to me. I said, hey, it's a bucket list item. Why not? Let's give it a try. And that was a tough go, because it's still reality TV, so you still, they want some drama, they want some of this, and even, and I'm one of those kind of guys. I'm usually cool as a cucumber, even if things are going a wreck, I'm usually pretty cool. And they were constantly in my face going, what's going on? Why are you mad? I'm like, I'm not mad. What are you talking about? So, but it was a fun bucket list item. At the end of that, they wanted me to do 5 more seasons. And I just couldn't do it, because it was 3. They wanted me to do 3 new businesses, help 3 new businesses every episode. And they wanted 11 episodes per season.
Holy moly.
I was like, man, that's 33 businesses a season. They wanted to go after, what was that name of that? Marcus Lemonis.
Lemonis, I think.
Yeah. I can't remember his last name. Or he does. What's the name of that show?
The Prophet? Is that what it is?
The Prophet. Yeah. They wanted to go after something like that, and they wanted to kind of compete with the Prophet. And I told him, I says, man, I ain't got the bandwidth for that. I said, I'm not doing 33 new businesses a season. So I said, that's a lot. The shape of some of these small businesses, just having 1 to work with is enough. Can't imagine 30. I know. I thought I was pushing the limits at 20, and they wanted me to do 33. I'm like, no.
Goodness gracious. Okay, so you help small businesses like I do. I'm all about small business and not big business. So let's have a little coaching session here. What are some of the things that you see in small businesses that we can help coach them together on the show to maybe overcome, push through? Because I know a lot of, if not most, small businesses, they get stuck. And I think you and I both know the number one reason, and it's usually them, is the reason they're stuck, because they're the bottleneck.
Absolutely.
But I think they've heard that enough. But how does one get off that hamster wheel? That's what they always want to ask me, is like, how do I do that? Because I have to keep going just to pay the bills. Like, I have to keep revenue coming in, which means I have to keep working in the business. I don't see how I can even work on the business. What are some tips that you could offer?
Okay. So the first thing I always tell people, and is to give me a 6-month blueprint, or I help them create a 6-month blueprint. And so what we talk about is, I look at it as a road trip. It's like you and I can jump in a car and drive to New York without GPS, without a map, without anything. I could fly into Oklahoma City. You and I could jump in a car and make it to New York. But it probably won't be the most efficient way to get there. And so by having a roadmap and building a roadmap and knowing the destination of where you're trying to go, you're busy. Yeah, you're working on the business, but what kind of business do you want? I mean, what is this business? Are you wanting multiple locations? Are you wanting one location that works on its own? Are you wanting to be out of the business? Are you wanting to be in it? A lot of people say, I want a business that runs on its own. But then they're there every day and every one of their employees' businesses, double checking everything they do. Right. It's like, no, you can't have it both ways. You got to be upfront and tell me what you want and what you really want.
Yeah.
And then so then we work it backwards. So once I know where they want to go, once I know that direction and the destination, then we work it backwards and create a 6-month blueprint to get there.
So in other words, clarity.
Clarity. Absolutely. Yeah.
You use that word a lot. I know I do.
That's the word you use. Exactly. So, so it's the same thing. It's, but literally it's focusing. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have focus, every road, going back to a road trip, every distraction, every roadside attraction, you're going to be pulling off, and the way I explain it is if we're going from Oklahoma to New York, it's okay if there's a roadside of attraction that's along the way.
Yeah.
But you can't say, hey, let's go to Disneyland in Miami or Florida. I mean, that's way off course,
Right.
So by knowing the destination, we can easily build a roadmap to get there.
Yeah, that's a good tip, because I know that even children's movies talk about clarity. So if you think about Alice in Wonderland, when she asked that little toadstool, whatever that thing was, which path should I take? And he responds, where do you want to go? She's like, I don't know. And he's like, well, then what does it matter? Which path you go down, So children's movies even got clarity.
Even got that figured out. Exactly. So,
So
you got to have that.
Yeah. So when someone is, like a small business owner, let's say they're trying to create a plan or some clarity, a lot of them can't even get past thinking, how am I going to make payroll on Friday? So they can't think past that far. What's maybe a tip, if you have one, to where kind of get them to think further out? Today is today, tomorrow's tomorrow. Let's focus on the future.
Yeah. So, well, the first thing I do is we've got to come up with a game plan so that you can focus on the future. If you're already stressing out about payroll, they used to call me kind of the turnaround king, because I could figure out how to get people off the ledge quickly. And a lot of times it's because they're running their business inefficiently. And so, I can easily go down a P&L real quick, and I can talk to them, and we can figure out things to cut, things to, they're wasting their money on or whatever. And we could figure out how to run a more efficient ship, so to speak. And then once you have that in place, and you're not stressing about 2 days from now, Friday, if you're not stressing about that, then we can focus on other, and it could be a small thing, like I'll give you an example. There was a guy, he was stressed to the max because he wasn't able to clear, he was close to not clearing payroll every Friday or every payday. And I show up to his house, because he invited me to his house, and he's stressed and he's telling me about all this. And we walk out in his garage, and he's got all these motorcycles, and he had a couple of trucks, and he's into cars and stuff. And
wow.
I'm like, okay, you like these motorcycles? And I said, he goes, yeah, I love this one. He was explaining them all. He was getting all excited about it. I said, great, sell them. He's like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, is this worth your stress? I mean, every Friday you're stressing about payroll, and you've got $100,000 in motorcycles sitting in your garage, And so he did. He actually sold them. I was like, is this more important than your stress? And he goes, no, not when you put it that way. And so, he started selling the motorcycles and used that money to build the company where he wanted it to go. And now he's obviously twice as many motorcycles since then as a museum now, but I mean, he just needed a pivot, right? He needed a fresh set of eyes on things.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad there's people like you and other coaches that can help people, with those situations, because the name of one of my businesses is Business Ownership Simplified for Success. And I get so much debate on, because I'll say business really is simple. It really is.
Yeah. If you break it down to its most basic, it's offering something, a service or a product to somebody that wants it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's really it.
And they're like, well, it's not easy. And I said, I didn't say it was easy. I just said it was simpler than we make it. So,
absolutely.
You're listening to Small Business Pivots, a podcast created for small business owners who feel like their business is stuck, for business owners who feel they are working hard and not getting anywhere, For more small business advice, visit our YouTube channel at Business Ownership Simplified. Let's get back to our guest. Yeah, so what got you here? So growing up, you were a little bit of a whatever you want to call it. I don't want to put words. Trying to think of the right word so we don't offend anyone. But what were some of the things that you learned along the way growing up in those circumstances that you feel might have helped you today, so that business owners can understand, hey, just because this happened to me back then, I can use it as fuel, or I can just get over it. What were some of those things that you learned?
I think probably the one thing that probably pivoted my entire life, honestly, was I actually had joined the Army, and I signed up for the Army, and I was supposed to report for military duty. My MOS was going to be underwater demolitions, and I was supposed to report on a Monday, and the Friday before I was supposed to report, I was goofing off on the highway down the road racing with some friends, and I rolled my car and broke my back and I was paralyzed from the waist down.
Wow. And
I had to, of course, the doctor's telling you, yeah, you're 18 and you're going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life, kind of thing, and that just wasn't me. I just couldn't see being in a wheelchair. And I just refused. And so, for about 6 weeks, I couldn't feel anything. And then slowly I started feeling a little bit of tingle, and I took advantage of it. I just said, that's it. I'm taking it. And so I was in the therapy room all the time, and the nurses were kicking me out of there at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. They're like, yeah, you're supposed to be in here. Yeah. I was in there all night long. What else you got to do? You're sitting in the freaking hospital. Yeah. So I was just, so I was in there all the time, and I walked out of there. Well, they made me ride a wheelchair out, but as soon as I got to the front door, I got up and walked to my dad's truck and got in. And
that's amazing.
And I just decided after that there's nothing going to stop me from doing whatever the heck I want. Problem is, I still didn't know what I wanted.
Right.
So that was when I was 18. When I was 19, I joined the prison system in Texas as a prison guard. Didn't like it, hated it. You're fighting all day. I was on the riot team. They had me training hand-to-hand combat on to the riot teams. And then I worked death row in Huntsville. But it was there. It was when I met my wife. Me and my wife got married. We were young. I was 19. And my wife made a mistake. So it's funny because it was her mistake that changed everything. She made a mistake in the checkbook the first month we were married.
Oh, no.
And she moved the decimal point over. And this shows you how broke we were.
Yeah.
Instead of $25 in the bank account to cover gas to get to work to the prison till the end of the month, I had 25 cents.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. And I was like, ooh, we got a problem. We ain't got enough gas money to get back to work.
Yeah.
And so I remembered on the way to the prison, there was a wrecking yard on the side of the road. And I was pretty handy with cars. My dad always taught me how to work on cars. So I pulled in there I worked 4 days on, 4 days off, 12-hour shifts at the prison. So I pulled in there on my Friday, and I said, hey, I'm kind of desperate. I need some cash. I said, can I do anything for you? And he said, it's perfect timing. He goes, we're crushing cars. It's crush season. There's a bunch of cars we need to crush. And in Texas, every state's different, but in Texas, we had to, he would lift the cars with a forklift, and I'd get underneath there with these big old cutters, and I'd cut the bands off the gas tank and pull the gas tanks out of the cars because they wouldn't allow you to crush the cars with gas tanks.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I can do that. I was big, I was strong, and I had been working out a lot. I was, matter of fact, back then I was benching like 400 pounds. So I was like, yeah, I can do anything. Wow. So, Man, that was terrible. Oh, freak me.
It was getting so good, and then that was terrible.
Oh my gosh. So you're 110 degrees out, and you're underneath this old car and old gas that smells like turpentines pouring on you.
I didn't think about the smell.
And oh my gosh, man! And I just all day, wham, wham! I'm cutting all these tanks out and throwing them off to the side. And he, at the end of the day, he hands me $20, and I was like, man, that's enough for gas. That's enough to fill my truck up. I was like, I'm just grateful I can fill my truck up, get to work. And I told him, I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to take this $20 and buy you lunch tomorrow, because I have never met an entrepreneur until you. I've never met a business owner. He was the first business owner I ever met.
Really?
And I said, I want to take you to lunch tomorrow and pick your brain. And he says, okay. So we went to lunch. Luckily, he paid. But,
I was going to say, where did that come from?
yeah, he bought lunch, and then we sat down. And his name was Alan Brown. Never forget him. Love the man. Still visit him. I still I fly to Texas at least once a year and visit him now.
Very cool.
But he showed me, that I could make money on my own. He's like, you see that car out there? I said, yeah. He says, you think you can fix this? I said, you bet. He says, I'll sell you that car for $75. And he says, you fix it, and then I'll show you how to sell it. I said, okay. So I fixed it, and we sold it, and man, I held that money. And that was the first time that I made money without a boss. I always had to have a job. You want money? Go get a job. That was my mentality. And that was the first time I made money without a boss. And I was like, holy hell. Once that clicked in my mind, there was no stopping me after that, man. I quit the prison. I started a classic car business. I bought a truck and a trailer, and then I bought a truck and a 3-car hauler, and then I bought a semi. And by the time I was done, I quit when I was 24. I started this when I was 24. By the time I was 26, I was shipping classic cars to Australia, New Zealand, Denmark, Norway, all over the United States, all up into the Rust Belt. I had 10 acres of classic cars, and I literally built a pipe system, rack system, and I had them on shelves.
Wow.
And I had them parked on a shelf system. And we were selling cars all over the place.
So you think Carvana got their idea from you? You know how they stack those cars up.
Right, stacking them up.
Yeah.
Oh, but again, I was still young and dumb at the time, and I didn't know what I didn't know. And I dedicated so much time, and that literally almost cost me my marriage, because I was gone all the time, and I didn't have balance, and I was working 7 days a week. 24/7. I was down there buying, selling, cars, and people showing up with bags of money, and I was just feeling like I was on top of the world, and didn't even realize that my wife was not happy. That's how oblivious I was. And so, yeah, but that was my first business. That was the first business. And that was the first one that I took to my first business. And I took it to $1 million in 2 years.
Wow. So working all those hours, did the business require you to do that, or that was just from your passion and drive?
Passion, drive, man. You mean I can make money and I don't need a boss, and the harder I work, the more money I make. Yeah, I'm going to own the world.
Well, so you discovered somewhere that your wife wasn't happy. How did you change maybe the mindset or your hour? What happened there? Because I know a lot of business owners overwork themselves. Yeah,
it's like a pendulum, right? And so you got to remember, I was 26. I didn't really understand life still. And, I said, she wasn't happy. Texas was too hot. Everything was just miserable. Everything in Texas wants to kill you. You got rattlesnakes, you got thorns. Mesquite bushes, everything in Texas wants to kill you. Scorpions, and I said, where do you want to go? I said, I'll close the business down. I'll sell the business, whatever, and we'll move wherever you want to go. And she said she wanted to go back to Utah, which is where her family is from.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, they're north of Salt Lake, in a little town called Bountiful. And the way I make decisions, I mean, yeah, it was crazy. I said, all right, pack the bags, let's go. I said, I'll put the house up for sale. I'll sell the business. I walked down. I went right to the business. I went right to work. And one of the guys in the shop was there, and he seemed he was a doer. And I walked in. I says, you like the business? He goes, yeah, I love it. I love it. I said, great. I said, I'll sell it to you. Own or carry. It's yours. And I signed over everything to him and walked away.
Wow. Yeah. Is it still in business? I'm curious.
No,
it
didn't last. It didn't last a year.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I was broke by the time I was 28. I lost all my money. Yeah, but I saved my marriage. So moved to Salt Lake, and decided to start another business up there. Had no idea what I was doing. Started another business, and it was a service-based business. It was a wildlife company, and man, we took that to, I think the first year we made $250,000, and then second year we made $590. And fast forward 5 years down the road, I had a Salt Lake office, I had a Denver office, I had a Fort Worth and a Dallas office, and I had a Colorado Springs office. And so I sold all that and was going to retire.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so I sold all that, and we bought a house in Missouri, and I moved out to Missouri, and we bought 35 acres with a lake, the dream house, right? People actually used to come up to our driveway and ask if they could take their Christmas pictures and stuff in front of our house, because
wow.
It really was like kind of like a colonial house, and had the round driveway with the flowers all in the middle. It was it was a postcard house, and it was the dream house that my wife had wanted. And again, you don't know what you don't know when you're young, right? So we thought this is what we wanted. We were only 30. Man, I was 31, 32, and thought this is what we wanted. It was 6,500 square foot, middle of Missouri. My days consisted of waking up at 10:30, and I'd sit out on the porch till lunchtime. I'd drive to town, eat lunch with my wife, go back home, take a nap till 3:00 in the afternoon.
Wow.
Yeah, slept in the hammock. I had a hammock on a porch. This is how lazy we were, right? So I had a hammock on a porch, in a screened-in porch, and I had a TV that came out of the wall, and a remote for a fan above me. So I had two remotes, a TV and a fan. I'd turn them both on, and I'd start watching the news or whatever, and I'd fall asleep. And then sleep till about 3:00. Bless my wife, because after about, I don't know, it was about 4 months. For some reason, I had to go back to Colorado, and I can't remember why I went back to Colorado. But when I was in Colorado, I got this renewed energy about building businesses again. I was like, man, am I really going to retire? And this is going to be my life, the rest of my life. And it was a good road trip. I got to think. I drove the trip, so I thought the whole time. And I pulled into Missouri, and I thought, oh, my wife's going to kill me. And I walked in, and I said, babe, I said, how do you feel about moving back to Colorado and me jumping back into business? And she put the stuff down. She had a knife in her hand.
Uh-oh.
Probably not the best time to ask her, because she's cutting stuff for dinner, preparing dinner. She put it down. She goes, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
She goes, I didn't know how long I was going to have to put up with it.
That's funny. Communication. Yeah.
Yeah, communication. I was like, okay, boom, that was the answer. And the next thing you know, we put the house up for sale, moved back to Colorado, and started building businesses. And man, I was full throttle after that. I was building businesses, buying businesses. I was flipping businesses. I mean, yeah, it was, to me, I took what I learned in classic cars, and I converted it to businesses. So, you can buy a 68 Chevelle SS, right? You can buy a 68 Chevelle SS that needs interior work, but everything else is done. They already done the motor, they've done everything else, but they got a divorce and they didn't get to finish the project.
Yeah.
Back in the day, I could buy one of those for 10 grand, put the interior in it, sell it for 25, 30 grand, right? Of course, their prices are way higher now. But anyway, back then, I did the same thing with businesses. I'd look at business and go, man, if he just did this, this, and this, that business would be worth double.
Yeah.
And I'd offer him a price, buy the business, fix it, sell it, and so then I just went to town with that.
Very cool. So your company, Mentoring Giants, is that a coaching company? Is that?
Yeah. Mentoring Giants is just strictly, I don't do anything anymore. Business wise, I've sold all my businesses. I built a $5 million real estate portfolio here in Colorado. It was my last challenge. I took $5,000, built $5 million in 2 years. And we pretty much just, rent everything out, have leases on everything, and I just chill now. So now I thought, okay, I'm almost back to the Missouri days, and it's like, okay, now, in order to keep myself busy and do something, I decided to start Mentoring Giants and do the coaching. Okay,
so you're fairly confident your wife isn't tired of that yet, you being at home? Because
she is one tough woman, let me tell you. She's put up with a lot of stuff. I can promise you that.
Well, I think most spouses have. We were talking about military earlier, and they talk about a military spouse. Well, being the owner or the spouse of a business owner has its own disadvantages as well.
Absolutely.
So finding that balance is critical. I like to call it integration, because I think as a business owner, you're always on call, just like a doctor, because you never know. But it's how you integrate business and life, and works a little bit better because I know some business owners, they try to balance the life. And I'm like, you can't really balance because things come up,
Yeah.
So
things come up. And that's why it's important to have an understanding wife. Because you can always make it up. I remember one time I told my wife, I was like, look, we just need to take a month off. I said, where would you like to go? And just take a month off. And that's when you've got a business, right? When you can take a month off and your business is still making money when you get back, right? And so that was the real test. And so we went to Hawaii for a month and hung out there for a month and just chilled and enjoyed the islands, hopped the islands, checked everything out. Then we came back, and the company had actually made more money the month I was gone than the month previous to me leaving. And so that's when I knew I had my systems in place and everything was right, and I had the right people in the right spots.
What would you say is probably, I kind of have a top 3 things that every business must have to be successful. What is your top 3?
I would say the top 3 is obviously a good product. You got to have a good product. You've got to have systems in place.
Amen.
If you don't, you just have a job.
Yep.
And this is what I have. I hate telling people this, but a lot of times I interview somebody. I'm like, okay, so you're basically telling me this job, this business doesn't work without you. And they're like, yeah. Well, then guess what? You don't have a business. You've got a job.
Exactly. Expensive job.
Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, you're working way too much and you're making way too little. And so we got to figure this out and change this around. But it's all in perspective, right? So anyway, going back to what you said, the top 3, good product, systems in place. And if it's a business that is dependent on employees, I would say you got to have the right people in the right spots.
Oh man, we did not talk about that before, but you and I are dead on. Those who have listened to this show, except for one of them, I agree with the product. But I say guiding principles. So you got to have a North Star. You got to have its strategy. You got to have vision, statement, mission, all that good stuff. SOPs is in for me is number 2. And then number 3 is people, but more than just employees. It's your banker, it's your suppliers, your contractors, vendors, your support. I would
agree with that.
Support team. So we're almost dead on there. So listeners, You've heard me say this before, and here's another coach saying it as well. So please, please, please just go get those 3 things and you'll be successful.
Yes. Systems. I
Yes.
always tell people it's all about the systems and getting your right team. So here's the biggest mistake. Oh man, you got me fired
I got
up
you going
on
now.
here. So yeah, I got me going on something here. So one of the things I always ask people when I'm coaching them, okay, and they come to me and they say, my employees aren't working, or this ain't working, the systems ain't in place, whatever. I ask them one simple question, and almost 99% of them can't answer it. I say, who's your most important guy? Fred. Okay, great. What's Fred's wife's name? I don't know. How many kids does Fred have? I don't know. When are their birthdays? I don't know. And this is the biggest mistake people make is your business, once you have a team underneath you, is your team.
Yeah.
And you take care of your team and they will take care of your business.
Amen.
When I changed the way I thought about my team, that they didn't work for me, I worked for them. That changed everything. And so what I learned is if you help them achieve their goals, they will work 10 times harder to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
So what I used to do is once a month, I would call Fred in the office and I'd say, Fred, what's your goals? Seriously, what are your goals? You can't be wanting to be my manager for the rest of your life. What are your goals, really? And tell them to me. Let's go. And then I would help him get there. Oh, you need money for a new truck. Great. You think you deserve a raise? Where are we at? How can we get you to a new raise? How can we make you more money? You need a new house, you need a down payment for a house. Where are you at with your finances? How much of a down payment do you have? I mean, I would literally help them with their finances. I would help them with their life. I would help them with whatever I could provide. And I tell you what, I never lost an employee during that time. I mean, when I was doing that and things were running on all 8 cylinders, man, my business went from, when I changed, I went from $300,000 a year. I broke $1 million the next year. And the only thing I did different was that. That was the only thing I did.
That's pretty powerful testimony right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So how many businesses have you owned?
I've owned over 40 companies.
40, and they've all been 7 figures, or?
Yeah, well, they've all been at least 6 figures. I mean, I've done a lot of challenges on 6 figures in 6 months. So, I mean, I've taken I've started with $0. I've taken a challenge. I used to have a group and people would follow me and I'd literally start with $0 and try to build a 6-figure business in 6 months.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah, I mean, literally I would say, okay, I'm going to take this pen and I'm going to go sell this pen or trade this pen for something. And we're going to work our way up to 6 figures. And I did. I mean, I would do it every year I did it. And it got to be boring. I did it for like 5 years. The problem was at the end, I mean, I did 500,000 in like 3 months. I was like, okay, this is, it's almost like too easy. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I need a different challenge, So I kind of quit doing that. But it was a fun challenge and people loved following along while I did that. And, but now I find it easier. And here's a little life hack too, figure out what you're good at. There's a lot of guys online that are good at marketing, for instance. Yeah. Well, then find a company that sucks at marketing and buy it.
There's an idea.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I got 40. Everybody asks, how do you get 40 companies? Well, I didn't build them all from scratch. I would find people that were not good at something I was good at, and I would offer to buy their company. And sometimes I paid cash for the company. Sometimes I did owner carry. I did several different deals. I'd find guys that are retiring and nobody would take on their company, and I'm like, I'll take it on. I'll turn it around. I've owned cleaning companies. I've owned, I took a cleaning company that was making. What was she making? She was making like 80. I think that last year she left, she was making like 86,000 was her take home.
Yeah. Wow.
And I took that over $1 million in less than a year. I mean, I bought a fleet of trucks. I logoed them. I put everybody in uniforms. I mean, I brought the company up to a different standard, and it really, the sky's the limit. I mean, you can do anything you want to do. Really, literally, you can do anything you want to do. But what I suggest is find something you're really good at. If you're really good at, employees, for instance, what was his name? I just went blank on his name. Andrew Carnegie said he knew nothing. He knew nothing of the making of steel, but he was considered the steel magnate of the world, right?
For sure.
He says, I knew nothing of making of steel, but I was the best picker of men.
Ooh, that's good.
And I liked that. I was like, that's the way I want to be. I don't need to know everything. I just need to know how to pick the team. And so that's what I do. I focus on team building and being able to pick the right players.
Yeah, that's golden advice as well, because I have found that in most, including my own businesses that I've started, you can build a team, but you gotta find that one person. The business never takes off until you find that one special, unique person that can lead that team, be kind of your right-hand person, has a little bit of common sense, that you can train or teach. And I don't know, I just see so many business out there that have a team of 20 people. They don't really have a business, they have a daycare. You know what I mean? They're managing personalities. And so for those business owners that are struggling, like, I've got a team. Well, do you have the right team is what I always ask, is do you have that one person that you can utilize to kind of take your vision and kind of filtrate it through the business and kind of be that leader, if you will?
Yeah. Going back to that story that I told you guys, where I took that company from 300 some thousand to $1 million by learning how to coach the team or talk with the team.
Yeah.
Going back to that, now that I look back, I had 7 employees. Every one of those employees now, I've sold that company years ago, but I'm still friends with them on Facebook and stuff. Every one of those employees own their own business right now.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah. It gives me goosebumps. Yeah. Like that's a leader right there.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to teach them. Rising tide raises all ships here. I'm sure you've heard that story. Yep. So I wanted to teach them all to run. You want to run your own business? You want to do your own thing? I have no problem teaching you how to do it. I have no problem. I'm an open book. I don't hide anything, and I showed people how to do it. I even told them, hey, this is the banker I use. This is the person for this I use. I mean, go for it, man. You want to do it? Do it. I'll help you. Yeah. And just them knowing that, they stuck with me until I went through the sale of the company. And then once I sold the company, they all started kind of going off on their own. They said it wasn't the same without me there, but which is fine. But the seed was planted, and so, and they, once they had a taste of, I could be my own boss, or I could do my own business, they couldn't get that out of their mouth.
Well, you were talking earlier about the difference between having a job and owning a business. I also find that a lot of business owners, you'll know if you have, so I call them people dependent and process dependent. So people dependent is if Fred leaves, the whole place shuts down. Like, we can't function without Fred. If Fred leaves and you're not worried about it, now you've got a real business. Now you've got something. You don't, because so many small business owners come to me and they're like, I don't know what I do if Sally leaves, or this person or this person. And I'm like,
terrible.
Yeah, that's not a good place to be in. So going back to your systems and processes, that's what that's for. So anyone can come in and learn that job. And so you and I both have had businesses where we're not worried about a Sally leaving or a Fred leaving, or, and that's how you build those bigger businesses. Is that right?
Absolutely. And going back to that business, because again, that's when I really shifted my mindset. When somebody was moving, we all showed up on a Saturday and helped them move. I mean, we were a team, we were a family. And by doing that, they covered for each other. If Fred was sick that Friday, somebody at the round table said, you know what, I'll take his route. I'll cover his jobs. He'll make it up. He'll make it up for on another day. And so I didn't have to ask anybody. I didn't have to tell anybody or demand somebody to take on his route or do his stuff. I mean, they voluntarily did that. They said, "Oh man, I hope he's feeling better. I'll take it." And they covered each other. And that's what you want, man. You want something like that. You don't want the, is it 5 o'clock yet? Is it 5 o'clock yet? That's the wrong environment. Everybody looking at the clock to see if it's time to go home. Matter of fact, I had an employee call me one time. She was the office manager. She called me and she says, "Ron," she goes, "there's this little old lady right down the road from us, and she can't afford our services." And she goes, "I just happened to look in Google Maps, and this is all on her. This is my office manager.
Yeah.
I happened to look at Google Maps, and she says, and there's a really big park across the street from her house." She goes, "What would you say if we showed up on a Saturday and did the work for free and then had a company barbecue across the street at the park?"
Wow.
And I said, "Do it." I said, I'll provide all the food. I said, "I'll buy everything." I said, "Do it. Let's do it." And that was her thought coming to me. I mean, that's the frame. That's the mentality of the team you want, I mean, that was, who was I to say no to that?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
I was never going to get in the way of something like that, And so, yeah, absolutely. And our church at one time they had a truck breakdown and they needed some of the food delivered to the less fortunate. And I had a service business, so we had 13 trucks.
Yeah.
And so I came in on Monday one day, and I told the guys, I says, "Listen, we got a problem. We got an 18-wheeler sitting on the highway with a bunch of food going bad, and it needs to be taken to the church and distributed to the less fortunate."
Mm-hmm.
I says, "I'm for it. If you guys are for it, I want you to clear out your trucks and let's go get that food out of there, out of the 18-wheeler." And we did. We went and we loaded up emptied our trucks out of all the service stuff, all our tools, left it all in the parking lot, and drove out, got the food out of the truck, drove it over. And you know what? At the end of that day, it was that day. At the end of the day, they all came to me and said, "Is there any way that we can help with that food truck on a regular basis?" Because they heard that food truck came once a week. And I was like, "Yeah, every Monday we can go and help unload that truck, and do that." And they're like, "Let's do that." And every Monday we did that for over a year.
Yeah, those are some good learning lessons there. That's when you have a special business.
Yeah, that was a special time. That was a special time.
I know that I don't want to take up more of your time. We might have to do a second show because I'm sure you and I could just help educate.
Absolutely, man.
Small businesses, because you and I have walked in their shoes. We know the struggles. We know there's an easier way to do it. It's not easy, but there is an easier way to scale and grow a small business. And I think Richard Branson says every big business started small. I think, absolutely. So, the sky's the limit, the freedom, all those good things are what small business in America is all about. So I appreciate your time. I've thoroughly enjoyed this. How can someone get a hold of you for mentoring?
You can go to mentoringgiants.com.
Okay.
Or you can find me on Twitter and LinkedIn. Those are usually the only two social media groups I kind of hang out on.
Very cool. Any last words of wisdom? You've been full of it today. Tips, trick, a book to read?
Well, I will tell you this. So here's a little interesting tip.
All right.
So I happened to work with one of my mentors in my group was a guy named Leo Widener. And unfortunately, he's passed away since. But when I worked with him, he was the last person alive to have worked with Napoleon Hill directly.
Oh, wow.
He ran Napoleon Hill's school in the 60s and 70s. And he was head of the school. And as a gift to me, he gave me Napoleon Hill's. Yeah. So I got Napoleon Hill's school manuals from the 60s and 70s from his school. But with that being said, I'll leave you with the fastest way to help yourself is to help somebody else.
Amen. It's great advice. Well, Ron, thank you again, and we will catch up soon.
Sounds great, brother. You take care.
Right. You too. Welcome to the recap and the Coach's Corner that we follow up with on every Small Business Pivots podcast. Today, wasn't Ron fun? He's probably one of my top 3 guests that I've had thus far. It's almost like you know him. If you've never even met him, he's always got advice, wisdom, which leads me back to the recap of mentorship. So I'm going to combine the recap and the Coach's Corner today because it aligns with each other, and that is the importance of guidance, leadership, mentorship, coaching, things like that. So your action item for this podcast is to not just listen to this podcast, but listen to each podcast and pick something out of it, whether it's going to be something you don't do in the future or something that you do. Make sure that you're not just listening. Learn to earn. Take something from that book, that podcast, that YouTube video that you're watching, and actually apply it to your life. I know so many people that watch and learn over and over and over, and they're just overwhelmed in business and life because they've never taken action. They've never slowed down to actually apply anything they've learned. We learned about the importance of culture building and leadership and all those things. But one of the most important things, if you want to be successful in life and business, hire a mentor, hire a coach. We have 2 on here today. One is Ron Douglas. Go to mentoringgiants.com. You have Michael D. Morrison right here. You can go to michaeldmorrison.com. You can schedule a free consultation if you click the right button in the top right-hand corner on our website for a consultation. We can visit. I'd love to get to know our listeners. Go to our YouTube channel. It's Business Ownership Simplified. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Connect with Ron on LinkedIn or Twitter or any other social media channel that he's on. Go find a mentor. Start there. Not only that, one of his quotes was, the fastest way to help yourself is to help somebody else. So not only go find yourself a mentor, a coach, take action items, but also be a mentor to someone else. We'll see you next time.